Mm, mm.
Yay.
All right, well, here we are. Well, Meredith, thank you for being on the show once again. It's time to talk about some Neville and just other stuff that's going on too.
Really.
Yeah. So you've had a lot going on. You've accomplished a bunch of things recently, and now
Aw.
and you've been quite busy, and now you're sort of coming back to Earth, and so what has yeah. So what I honestly I can't keep up with all the stuff that you're doing. So what have you been doing? And it's nice that you've come back to the Earth's orbit for a little while.
Yeah, I'm happy to be back. And I kind of like took a little bit of a break from creating content and speaking. And I'm kind of still on that break, but I'm happy to kind of like dip my toes back into the well, And
Yeah.
so the last year has been wild. And I think that it was like around about a year ago when we last spoke, right? Maybe like October, November, you think?
I think I could go back and check. I think it was like, you might be right. It might be right about then. When was that? When was that? Let's see.
I
I
think
got it.
it was I think we're coming up on like a year, which is insane to think about. Like it's felt like it's been like 7 years, 2 months, like.
Oh, I know. Well, that's something I definitely talk about. Time has changed in this world.
Mhm.
It was 9 months ago. So it was 9 months.
Wow, okay, it was 9 months ago. Okay, so since then I finished my massage therapy program and like within I got my license on Friday the 13th.
Oh wow.
And yeah, and I'm just kind of like looking to see what's out there, and I'm excited. I kind of want to work. My teacher, when I was in massage school, has me thinking that I should work at like a doctor's office or go like the medical massage route, which is funny because I could never see myself working in a doctor's office. But I understand what she's saying. There's a lot of different routes that you can take within massage, and I'm just kind of like looking at everything, and I feel a lot of excitement. There's a high level of demand in this area for good massage therapists. So I feel like I'm like a kid in a candy store, kind of after doing astrology for so long. And I haven't really been doing that as much anymore. So, which is
Mm.
nice. It's nice to take a break from time and from the different set goals and seasons. Like, I think I needed a little bit of a break from that.
Oh yeah, no, it makes sense. I mean, yeah, I mean I haven't done charts for like I did do astrology pretty regularly, well, for a couple of years,
Mhm.
and you definitely can start doing a lot of charts, and
Yeah.
so uh, and yeah, it would be hard. It'd be hard to do for a living, and also just the yeah, it's it's a great thing, but at the same time, a chart is a lot of work and yeah, it's a full-time thing. It's a lot of work. I think it can get draining for sure. As a full-time job, it can get, you know, pretty
It is
draining.
it is so mental, which is fine in some ways, but like, I don't know, can be, yeah, like it's a different strain that maybe like we're not used to using, I guess. And also,
Yeah.
you know, yeah, I think that like for me, because the astrology of like this time period is so complex, like it's like what Nostradamus was talking about, when he was
Mm.
writing, like that we're in a period of like what's called conjunctional astrology, which is something that Nostradamus talked about, where like a lot of big outer planets come together and like make noise, and that's why we're in all of these really crazy, kind of collective situations. And so it's just a lot, and I think everybody in their own way is feeling, some of that, like some of the fact that like as somebody who did astrology for almost 10 years professionally, I can tell you that that shit is complex right now. um
Mm.
and yeah, I think that like for me, I would rather like help people with their bodies for now. You know what I mean? Like instead of, because people also look externally a lot with astrology. They're like, when am I going to find
Yes.
that, the soulmate that's going to just like take all of my problems away with my presence in their life? I mean, I think like, or when is it going to happen for me? That's like the thing. And I think we learn with the Neville material,
Yes.
though I've thought a lot about Neville teachings since we have last spoken. It's interesting to think about how, he just says, right, like the subconscious, the imagination, awareness is God, and
Yes.
that you are the one creating things. And I was just wondering, like, since I have you here and we're talking about Neville, what do you think about like the idea that we're co-creating with the universe or with the higher power or like our higher self versus the idea that like here now in this expression we are God? Like what do you think about the distinction between that?
Yeah, it's tough because it gets into that Neville concept of, well, I know he did speak about it and he wrote about it, but the whole idea of, free will, do you have it or not,
Mhm.
and it gets into his definition of your like wonderful human imagination, as he would call it, being God.
Mhm.
And so in a sense, really when we are in a meditative state, which can come from just walking barefoot on the grass, or it could come from, lotus position, doesn't matter. When you're
Mhm.
there and you're aware of that I am presence, then
Mm.
that's it. That is your wonderful human imagination. That is God. So
Yeah.
it's quite the I think it's one of the things that I'm not. I have to qualify it. I'm not a big Eckhart Tolle fan. Okay, but
Sure.
yeah, but because I just don't want anyone to think I don't drive a minivan or anything like that. I'm not a I'm not a what do they call it, power of now guy.
Yeah.
But the thing is that Eckhart Tolle, it's like the one thing he did say that was very powerful, and I think he said it. There's this amazing. You can probably find, people can probably find it if they search for it on YouTube. But it's just called "Even the Sun Will Die," which is about as cheery as
Mhm.
Eckhart Tolle gets.
Mhm.
But it's this great talk that he gave, and it was recorded live. And he gets into like what he called like the natural consciousness meditation, which I think is all he ever really needed to say, was that when you meditate on the energy of the body, your I am presence, your energy, you feel it. One can
Mhm.
feel their conscious force that is their body. They can feel that. And so I think that when we get into the I am, when people cultivate that, and some people are meditators, some are not, it depends on how you get there. But if you're
Yeah.
individuals are cultivating that presence, that consciousness, that's the human imagination, that's the I am presence. That's like your connection to, some say that like all human consciousness is actually, all of our memories actually exist in the Earth's magnetosphere and not
Mm.
really local to our brain, but our brain is like our transceiver to it, So
Oh,
you,
like that
yeah,
receiver relationship.
yeah. So you start to like connect to that magnetosphere, all of consciousness. So I
Mhm.
think that like that God experience, which, I know some people, probably not anybody's listening to that, but some people would say, my, that's quite, you're very full of yourself. And I'm like, well, that's one of the things you have to work on with Neville material, is you have to just
Yeah.
realize that you're a God. And it's almost a letdown at first, because you're so used to it being out there that when it's
Yeah.
not, you're like, oh man, it's sad.
You're like, I have to take responsibility for all of this. But I do
Yeah.
think that like the way that Neville teachings are currently being taught and are like adapted by like present time
Hmm.
manifestation coaches, some of them, there is um I don't know. I feel that there's like a simplification or like a glossing over of like what is actually like what has formed the foundation for our subconscious mind, because I think that like probably, I mean, you believe in past lives, right? Or concurrent
Yes.
lives, right? So, you know,
Both. Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah. They're all, yes, exactly.
So
Yeah.
I kind of feel like, that some of the things that we really struggle with, like our deepest limiting beliefs that prevent us from claiming or accepting like our own kind of like our own connection to that, what you're talking about. Um, I think that some of those limiting beliefs don't come from this life. And, if you think about like a river, like going over rocks, it forms grooves over time that then sort of like really form these like really ingrained patterns. And so I think that like for me, I've been focusing on, I don't know, just kind of like maybe looking at why some of the contents of my subconscious is the way that it is, and kind
Mhm.
of like looking at it that way because, so for about a year, I've been applying Neville pretty regularly and, regularly getting into the sort of like alpha theta brainwave state that you're talking about and doing general, sort of like lullaby method, doing things that are more specific, have seen like turnarounds on both of those things. But, what I'm coming up against, or not against, but like what I'm coming up with is like all of these different layers, of like different, like I'll have an experience one day and I'll be like, dang, like, isn't that interesting? Like I'll find like a little, like a little like needle in the haystack or a little belief that like doesn't anything that prevents you from accepting your own creatorhood or, what prevents you from receiving like the good things that life has to offer. Those beliefs they come from somewhere, and I think that I know Neville doesn't get too much into that, right? Like, but I think that that's been an interesting component for me, at least in terms of understanding, why I'll go to sleep with sats and then I'll have dreams of manifesting the opposite, right? Because that's
Yeah. 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 I hear what you're saying. I think it's one of the things, like Neville was a great teacher, but he was like, he died in 72 and he was
Mhm,
teaching since the 30s.
mhm,
And I think some of his best stuff was probably like in 1950 or 60. And
totally.
he went through a lot of evolution during his time here. And I think,
Mhm.
like, one of my favorite little books is just like, At Your Command. I
Oh
always
yeah,
liked
you
it.
brought that one up last time.
Yeah, because it's like it's a great one that I tend to give people quite often. I'm just here, take this, because it's not biblical, and it's just
Mhm.
the idea of a little bit of, like, metaphysics that he speaks of. And hey, like a state akin to sleep, relax, visualize the end, you know of
Yeah,
your manifestation. So what would that look like, if it was fulfilled? Would people be congratulating you, etc.? Or would you just have it? What would that be like? What would that feel like it?
right.
Be in that state and just kind of hang out there, and then just drop it, like because maybe you fall asleep if it or on the couch during the day, or at night in bed, or you just maybe were sitting there just visualizing it while you were at the checkout, at the grocery store. It could be. So
Right.
um so maybe you were there for a bit, and then you do it and you drop it. And later in his career as a teacher, he would just say, just do it once and drop it. But most people aren't that advanced,
Yeah.
so they're going to do it once in a while, even
Mhm.
though knowing that just to have even just a whim, we have a whim, we go, oh, what a great whim, that sure would be nice, and we forget about it, and an hour later, boom, we have it. So
Yeah.
you can just it's our own resistance that keeps it from manifesting. But
That is the
um
truth of the matter. That is
yeah.
absolutely. I swear that like there have been things that I have been personally resistant to
Yes.
that I have dropped the seed for, and
Mm-hmm.
I have experienced some crazy things as a result of that, Um
Yeah.
and yeah, I feel that, what has worked more often for me is something more general,
Yeah.
like the lullaby method, or like something like that where I fall asleep. I think that for me now it's so normal to fall asleep in that state and to like
Yeah.
get excited for for bedtime, and to like kind of like I do a lot of Ho'oponopono, or maybe a guided meditation or something, and I'll really
Oh
like
yeah.
get myself there, and then I'll just do like lullaby method, thank you father, or like
Mm-hmm.
or just, and then you fall asleep with a really really good feeling. And then more often than not, you'd be surprised how much, like, how many things kind of align the next day, is what I have noticed. And so
Oh yeah.
so I feel like if I'm feeling a lot of resistance towards something that I desire, there's probably reasons for that. And that kind of goes back to what I was talking about like the past lives, ancestry, like these different things, how that contributes maybe to like our
Mm-hmm.
little like subconscious feelings of deficiency or unworthiness, or things like that. And I think, I mean, for me, like, if I want to release resistance to something too, what I've been doing recently is like, this isn't Neville, but I've been doing a lot of like Ho'oponopono,
Mm-hmm.
which to me, I want to talk to you about
Yeah.
revision actually, because I have I have tried to revise specific events, but for some reason have struggled to accept the new memory. And there is a movie called Sphere, I believe it's called. Have you heard of this movie?
No, I haven't. Sphere. I'll check it out. Sphere. Okay.
I haven't actually seen it, but someone was telling me about it when I was talking to them about revision. It's basically where one day these people, they wake up one day and there's like this alien sphere like in their town, and it starts to slowly like corrupt everything that
Ooh.
is around it. And so they all collectively get together, and I could be botching this. I haven't seen it, just somebody told me about it. They get together and decide to collectively forget that this sphere has ever arrived there. They agree consciously to forget. And
Hmm.
then one day they wake up and the sphere is gone. So I believe in that. I believe in the power of revision, but I have maybe been coming up against, like, in my process within the last year of like really applying this stuff regularly, I found way more ease in dissolving
Mm-hmm.
tension, resistance, stress, things like that with Ho'oponopono, as opposed to re-remembering events. Like for me, for some reason, I have found that it just doesn't work. Like, and I'm not saying that the practice of revision altogether doesn't work for everybody. Maybe it's just a matter of like individual difference. But I'm just wondering, as someone who's been practicing Neville for a long time, what do you think about that? And I really do believe that consciously forgetting something could be, some people might call that like spiritually bypassing or something, but I think that that could be a very good strategy to apply to what's going on in the world, at some level
Yeah.
right now too, so.
No, I think so. I think so because I find that with revision, one of the things with Neville is that he was, how would I put it? He was teaching in a time that was very different than
Mhm.
now, and I
Right.
think that he never really touched on a lot of things that I think, like, if he was alive today, people would be asking him all kinds of questions that he never got asked. And I think he'd have to be
Right.
engaged in a way that he never really was while he was around. And so a lot of his teachings are, he just sort of said it and people didn't really ask questions. Supposedly I've heard that he had, groups of people that he worked with, very closely and such, but I've never seen actually any evidence of that other than he
Yeah.
just went and lectured. There's weird claims that have been made and stuff like that he had like VIP groups and such, but I
I've
don't
heard of
think
that
it.
too.
Yeah, I don't think he did. I'm just kind of guessing. I just don't think so.
Mhm.
Um, I, I think so. The thing is, he taught, I think, the best he could at that time because he was
Mhm.
using a physical body as well, and like
Absolutely.
and like the life experience that was his. And so I think revision, so for me, um when I look at revision, I got to the point now where I only ever revise something that I did. I really never revise anything that
Something that happened to you.
or that I did, maybe,
Mhm.
and it could be that it happened to me. Yes, true. Something happened to me that I did, something that's very personal. you
Yeah.
know, Outside of that sphere, I don't really revise anything, because really
Mhm.
that's everyone else's deal, and
Yeah.
I just don't get involved because it's too much energy. So
Mhm.
for me, what I found with revision is I do it extremely half-assed. I do it very, very quickly. I just go, how would this be? I like it like this. Okay, like that. Yeah, I like it like this. This is good. I like it like this. And now I
Yes.
drop it. I really do. I go like the heck
Yeah.
with it. And if I feel that in the future from that moment, if I
Mhm.
can still feel this pull, like this is something which is bugging me, there's this hook there, I'll do it again, sometimes a few times, but in
Mhm.
time, maybe it takes a dozen times, maybe it takes once, but there's really nothing that hasn't gone away, and it's true. So forgetting is a good way to look at it. So now you have no energy there, and
Yes, exactly.
you forget about it, and that's really fine because our point of God consciousness is right here. We're manifesting
Exactly.
from this moment. It's just we're no longer manifesting it because that's the thing about the past lives, about the
The past.
parallel, yeah, the parallel lives that are happening at once. I see
Mhm.
it as like our past lives are all parallel lives,
Totally.
our past and future. The mind can't quite get it, but it's past and future lives all happening at once. And so, um, when you revise something, you're clearing this energy block
Mhm.
through many, many timelines, many, many
Right.
incarnations. And so,
Definitely.
all you need, yeah, so if it's very personal to me, I'll revise it. And I find that like just the less effort I put into it, just revise. I like it like this. So sure, it's nice like this. I like that, drop it.
Mhm.
And if I have to revisit it a couple of times, maybe even over the years, it comes
Mhm.
back and I go, oh, there's a little bit of something there. Let me revise that again. You know?
Have
Yeah,
you heard of the law of reversed effort? I think Neville talked about that, but also Joseph Murphy talked about that, and Emile Coué talked
mm,
about that, where like basically Coué talked about the law of reversed effort as like there's will, like your will to get what you want and to have what you need. It's kind of like an ego thing a little bit, you know? And then
mhm.
there's like your imagination, which is like what these teachers believe is God, right? And then, you know, so Emile Coué said that the will, like the imagination wins out over the will every time. So if you're
Oh
putting a
yeah.
lot of effort towards something, it could manifest the opposite or it could produce like wonky results. And I think that's something that I gained like when I was kind of like midway through the last year was like this sense of I think as you practice Neville, as you get into the state, and it's Joseph Murphy too, it's Emile Coué, H. Emily Cady, all of these different New Thought writers, Florence Scovel Shinn, they all
Yeah.
advocated for that state, you know? And I think the longer that you do that and the longer that you dip into that and get into that, your resting state
Yes.
changes. And for me, I found that I grew from someone who maybe was unknowingly holding a lot of like anxiety or tension or fear and kind of moved in a direction of like holding a lot more like relaxation and peace and security. So it kind of like, even if, which I have manifested some of the things that I, was the seeds that I was planting at that time. And since then, like, it's trial and error,
Yeah.
but I feel that like my state around it or like my orientation to it is much more relaxed and like
Hmm.
peaceful than when I started. And I think it's just a matter for me of like returning to the state and not like, you know, returning to the alpha theta, like the SATs state. I
Hmm.
think that trying to force something and like to really like, just to bang it into your head a million times and to like, to sort of like, you know, could be very counterproductive and could,
Mhm.
I think as well, if you have a lot of resistance to it, like we're talking about, it's like
Yeah.
it could, I feel like people could do that and give themselves like heartburn or a headache.
Yes.
Like, you know what I mean? Like it could like, because sometimes we're not ready for what it is. Sometimes like, the sort of like your baseline state needs to change before, so
Yes. Yeah. It's like vain repetition,
yes,
as as Neville used to call it.
exactly.
And I think what I was thinking with like with what you're saying reminds me like so with Neville, I think that he made a lot of things too easy. As in, he would give the method, which it really is that simple. But he
Mhm.
was also quite the badass manifester. And then I think about like
He's
maybe
a
late
method
six.
actor, right? Like he
Yeah,
was a method actor.
yeah, and he was definitely good on stage, and he was quite the amazing astrologer as well. Before he, as he called it, he traded the pearl of great price for. And he gets in this whole. There's a great lecture called "Pearl of Great Price," and he talks
I
about when
love
he was,
that lecture.
yeah, when he was an
That influenced me
astrologer.
a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I think that something that Neville did is, I'm never quite sure how to put it. I think that he oversimplified as far this is how I see it, and I think it might have just been the time he was in. Is that a manifestation is a path,
Mhm.
so if you are aware that so that if you can go through the initial like staircase of disbelief, like step number
Right.
one, you're God. Oh man, that'll just stop most people. That's it, over. But then if you keep going up the staircase of disbelief, um, I think that some of the things that really help are um, like, yes, well, you could say massage, you could say energy work,
Nervous system
tuning,
regulation, breath
fascia,
work. Yep.
yeah, fascia release, tuning for all that stuff,
Yes.
PEMF, all things, including diet, exercise, whatever one's meditative practice is, you know, all of that gets the toroidal energy force that we are, that manifests the body, the chakras, the energy. When that's
Mhm.
flowing, you manifest much better. Yeah, I believe, even though
Totally.
you can be unhealthy and manifest, but I would just say it's going to be easier if you're healthy and your energy's flowing. And the thing that Neville really never went into is that, so this is a spiritual path. And he never really said that. I think it's a spiritual path because now you've realized that you're a creator. You're okay. There is free will out there. All the beings have free will. You have,
I want to come back to that, but go
yeah,
on.
yeah,
I want to
yeah,
come back.
yeah, yeah. You've got the, yeah. We'll come back to that free will. We'll come back to that. I'll make a note. Free
Mhm.
will. But so when you have something that you want, like Neville used to say, like where did the whim come from? That
Mhm.
ultimately your conscious center, when you get into the I am, then you're open to God. You are God, and then these mystical, amazing experiences come through you, and
Mhm.
of course it's something that you have a desire. You go, I would like to hike this trail. I would like to become a massage therapist. I would like. Where do
Yes.
your whims come from? So your whims are coming from that deep part
From
of yourself,
God. Yeah.
from God. Yeah, and we can get into like the superficial ego self, you get into the God self, but ultimately these whims are coming through us, these desires are. And so with that, this is our path, this is where the growth is, this is where the self-realization is. And so your manifestation is a big friggin' deal, and Neville never really said that. So it might be, a 5-year path through hell. It might,
Exactly.
because you need to clear all this bullshit out to get where you're going. And also, this is another one that got me about past lives,
Yeah.
parallel lives happening at the same time. Uh, Abraham Hicks used to call it, or does call it, the like universal manager. And I know that Neville called it something. I have to find out where he called it this. He did
Mhm.
have a name for it, I think. But what is it that manages us? Because here's the thing: there are times when, here's a question for you. Like, hey, there are times when I have been just full on in manifestation mode. Like I wanted something, and I was there. I had visualized it, I experienced it, a state akin to sleep. I'd done it like several times. It was done. Like I know it was just so powerful, and it was to be. And I even dropped it because I was like, man, I have worn that out. It is done. I feel it. You know, um,
Stop. Yes.
yeah, it's done. And when you really are done, it's one of the things I was looking for the book, The Five Lectures, but I couldn't find it. It's something I've
Right.
been
I
into
remember you
recently.
mentioned that. Yeah.
Yeah, and Brian Scott just did a reading of all each five lessons, and it's very good if somebody wants to just listen to it. It's actually very good, and the book's not very big. It's five lectures he did it in a row, and a lot of people think it really was his best getting the point across. But he said, like, when you really, really are in that state of manifestation, it's like an orgasm, and then you are like exhausted.
Yeah.
Right? Like you literally will be like, whoa, like you don't want to do it anymore. You're like, I've had enough. I've had enough, So anyway, I had achieved, it was manifest, right? But it didn't happen, and I would even see it pulling into being. I would see the manifestation starting. You'd be like, this is happening. I'm seeing this starting, and I was like, yes. And even when it wasn't, like when it seemed to go the wrong way, I'd be like, yes, I don't care, the 3D, whatever. And I realized that, and this is the thing about free will, is that I didn't want it. It's that here's the thing, you may have come across this. Maybe it was years later. Maybe it was a month later. I was like, thank God that never worked out. You know what I mean? So who is it that screwed me up? Because if, you know what I mean? Because it had to be a higher me, an angelic being, spiritual helpers, God, but I had manifested it. It was manifest, but something stopped it from happening. And I was so grateful. So that has been,
I relate to this so much more than you think. And this really gets into some of what I too have been questioning of, like, because I feel that there are a lot of like promises made. If we look at like I believe like that, Neville was doing what he did, which was amazing in his own time, and that maybe we are to be picking up the ball a little bit and continuing some of the thoughts and ideas, and so toying around with the idea of like influencing people, free will, because these are things that today's manifestation teachers are kind of getting into in some ways. And I have to wonder about that because I recently had an experience where, like, you kind of like, have you ever had the this or something better kind of experience where you actually don't get what you originally wanted, but you get something that's like way, way better? I had that experience. And so for me, I know that, like, that it's made me question a little bit some of the Neville material. I'm not in the same place with it as I was when we last spoke. I'm in a whole different place, and that's a great place to be in too. But it's like, I do wonder about that, because I do believe that in some ways, like, maybe me not getting it was for my protection. And also there's this idea of like you giving things to yourself, too. Like, if you have a desire, you can experience it in imagination and then drop it, like you said, and the desire, like that hunger, kind of goes away, a little bit for me, or I've experienced that. So I have a question though about, like, okay, and I know that like the manifestation coaches and teachers of 2024 aren't necessarily, I mean, we've fallen since like Neville's time, in my opinion, just looking around at things. And in some ways,
the 70s, I think, is when that started, actually. That's just my take on it. Yeah.
Sure, yeah, I could see that. And, but I feel like I've listened to a little bit of it, but not too much. But what I have listened to makes me feel like it's kind of a bastardization of the teachings, because you end up hearing a lot of like, no one has free will in your reality. And,
Mm-hmm.
and there are like a lot of like sort of bastardized interpretations of everyone as you pushed out, that kind of like lead into things that kind of resemble control, like controlling
Yeah.
the person to me. And, and so it makes me feel a little, I don't know. I mean, I was just wondering, like, because I believe on some level that we have free will, but it's more like we have the free will to change our ideas and to like give ourselves new concepts in our subconscious rather than like, if we're stuck in a pattern and a pattern and a pattern, our brain is only going to see those choices that we have like been used to making. So it takes like,
Yeah.
a conscious choice to say, I would like to manifest this, thereby breaking the pattern.
Yeah.
You're gonna have there's a little bit of a process there, but I just wonder about like what you think of some of the teachers of today saying that humans are basically just other humans are just robots and it's all you and everybody's empty, and it kind of can get very very like solipsistic in a way that can be like kind of dissociating a little bit, and like I'm
Yeah.
just wondering what you think about that. And I have to turn my light off. It's kind of
Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
me, but I'm gonna turn off my camera real quick. But I want to listen to what you have to say about that.
Okay.
I'll be right back.
I'll just hold tight for 1 sec. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That
Oh,
feels better.
yeah. Yeah. Well, I think that, yeah. So the whole, yeah, free will thing. Well, somebody who's doing really great work with that, and there's only one, current, I would say, YouTuber, who really is taking the Neville material, like who's truly evolving it
Hmm.
and helping people get a deeper understanding of it. And that's this one guy, Joseph Ally, and
Yeah,
some of he's made videos for years, but some of his latest ones, and now he's with this lady who's doing the same thing, and some of her recent ones are very good. And they kind of have taken on the free will idea, like getting into
yeah,
the free will take on things. But so they're very good, their insight. But I do think that it comes down to ultimately there's only one of us here. We're all individuated. Like the I am that you feel is the same that
you're
all
one
else
in that
that
way.
that all else feels. And that we
Hmm.
have our assumption, we have our reality that we envision, that we create quite literally as we get better at it. And then
Hmm.
I don't think we're ever actually influencing another person in a negative way.
Yeah,
I think that we are, these are just laws of the way that the universe works. That's another thing I was thinking, how we need to get away from. I know that Neville liked the Bible and so does Joseph Murphy and all that, but I'm kind of like, I'm sort of done with parable. I
hmm,
think I think Parable was for their time, but this is just
right.
my little take. I think we're done with it. We just need like
Yeah,
give me paragraphs and bullet points. This just give me the spiritual science, because that's where we're at now. We don't Parable sucks. It's
yeah,
and also when you look at a lot of the writings that we're following, if you want to get like out there, a lot of archonic deception within them. So I'm sort of like to think that's where some of this stuff, this difficulty comes from. You have to sort of like sort through it to to get like those truth strains, those truth strings, those truth connections. Joseph Murphy and Neville did, but I think that was for their time, not ours. It's just my take on it.
yeah,
But so we have, it's an influence, but really it's an assumption. So the thing is that if you assume, if visualize a specific relationship with someone, um, then and then you hold true to that, you go, this is my vision of that relationship, then um, it may come and go, they may go this way, it may look like this, like that, but then eventually it will blend into that relationship the way you want it. you know
yeah,
you're not negatively influencing them, because really there's only one of us here, and it's my take on it that there's more than one of us. Like our individuated consciousness is something that we don't quite grasp in our linear mind. You know what I
yeah,
mean? And so we're having many relationships at once and connections that like we're living lives that we only sort of know about. And I think that like through this practice, we begin to know more. Like Neville talks about stopping time,
Right.
which I definitely believe that I think he did. And then also how he have so many like deep spiritual experiences where he would like fall in other timelines, as we'd call it today, and be like, oh, wait, this is a different, situation. And you have to kind of find his way back. And also he would like see people who he knew died yesterday that didn't know they died. They were alive in their experience. So
Yeah.
he knew they died yesterday, but yet they're still here. So who's that person? And who's the one who died and who's this? So I think our consciousness, this individuated consciousness, is much more than we can comprehend. So I really don't think that we can. I think this is where I think people get confused on like we've all in our life probably had like we've met like a narcissistic psychopath, right? If you haven't, don't worry, you'll get your chance probably. So the thing, they have a way of getting around. And so the thing is that that's a person on this 3D realm masters manipulation, control, domination, and torture. You know what I'm saying? And sometimes we get that confused with the I am, where a whim comes from God, ourself, our highest self, and then we go, I would like this relationship with this situation, like I would like this relationship with this person, this with this situation. I would like to, be entrepreneurial in this way. I would like to, all of these things. I would like to be healthier. I would like to, I am healthy. I'm getting healthier. I would like to, all these things that come, all these whims are of God. I really believe they are, because that's what we are. The more in touch with yourself, your I am you are, the deeper the whims are that come through, and every whim is a gift of God. You go through a path. Some manifest tomorrow, some manifest in a couple of years, but like what Neville didn't get into is that well, he did talk about like walking through the fires, the furnaces.
Right.
We have to walk. Yes.
And everything has its hour, time.
And it already existed. So really since it already existed, it sort of called you, it's like God connected you to that future happening. And so, so as far as like the free will, it's a tough one, but I think that ultimately from that I am presence of manifestation, we simply, it's like a holographic template. You hit like the consciousness of God hits it, the laser, then you get the hologram, like we just manifest that. And we're not even that thing that you may manifest and affect other people from the God source, from the whim. It's never going to be negative. Even if it might appear to be, it won't be, and it's really who are they and who are we? Where's that separation? And how many of you are there? Like one of you died yesterday. One of you is alive today. You know what I mean? I'm only beginning to grasp it myself. It's
my
go ahead. And that's part of the path. That's part of the fire, is the furnace, I guess, is that you get into, what is free will? What is the I am? And what is another I am?
Right.
Yeah.
I think about like kind of walking through the furnace as like could be the bridge of incidents, maybe like to, but I guess I wanted to, so I wanted to share with you that it's kind of like the double slit experiment, right? Where like, maybe there's infinite versions of you and you're on other timelines doing cool shit and other shit, then there's like a lot of different things going on at one time. And you're focused on like, Craig, you and me right now are having this conversation. This is like our particle. And right now, based on like my beliefs and assumptions about men, about YouTubers, about all these different things, about you personally, that like kind of defines how you show up with me in this conversation
100%.
And then vice versa, right? So like, you can have an assumption, and we make all of these like moment to moment judgments without even realizing it, and we assign all of these different meanings to things. And, so I think like that that's my take on everyone is you pushed out, is that like somebody
Yes.
could be the worst person in the world, but if you have kind of excavated whatever is alive in you that would maybe accept like abusive treatment from other people, or whatever it is, you're going to get the best version of that terrible person, to
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so, and also it kind of like it gets into like, well, how did those experiences of like tragedy, or how do those experiences of like if somebody like loses their family in a natural disaster or experiences like a terrible event, to what degree did they manifest that, and is that some type of like we have like all of these different seeds that are from a lot of different quote times or whatever, that I think like can come to roost, and can come, so I think that it's just a matter of like pruning the vine, like we've said before, in terms of like what we can control of that, I have
Yeah.
some other questions, or
Yeah.
just maybe points, topics, ideas that have come up like in this. And I just wanted to share that. So you mentioned diet a while ago, and one of the things that I noticed was my spiritual potency and my ability to manifest when I uh, vastly decreased my sugar consumption and even cut out certain like carbs, like I mean potatoes, like different fruits, like when I cut those out and focused on like good fats, like animal protein, things like that, I noticed that my ability to manifest like increased, tenfold. And I think everybody's body is different, but for me, like the lack of sugar makes for a steadier, easier, like more, like a less up and down, less turbulent path. Like
Yeah.
this is a path, And I think it's important to look at things like diet and addictions and stuff like that, because, you're kind of like you're getting to that place where you're more steady. That changes your resting state too, is not having blood sugar spikes all the time. So I just wanted to share that. You also talked about kind of clearing out the gunk and clearing your energy. And there's so many ways that you can do that. But one of the things that I used to do prior to Neville, and I kind of fell asleep to it, and then I woke up to it again, was like really deep clearing my energy, like visually, like imagining
Mm.
like, different colors and different like tools that I would use in my like visual, it just doing energy work on myself.
Yeah.
That is another thing that I noticed, like when I really started to do that and apply that in addition to some of the Neville stuff, even just going general, doing the lullaby method and stuff like that, that really also increased, if we're looking at this like from a results based place, which sometimes I do, sometimes I don't, but
Yeah.
that really also helped me quite a bit. And I think there's so much that you've said that I just want to respond to. Sorry. So
Oh, go for it. Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
you talked about Joseph Ally, and I guess his girlfriend's name is Athena, right?
Yeah.
One of the things that I really like about them, and I'm sure that if I like watch them long enough, I could come up with something that I don't like. I mean, whatever. But like one of the things that I have really liked about them is that they really emphasize the feeling. And I think that is, I mean, Neville said it himself, feeling is the secret. Like that is how the subconscious
Mm-hmm.
speaks. And when I think about the things that I have attempted to revise, specifically some of the stuff that happened last year that kind of like pushed me into some of these Neville-esque ideas, when I think about trying to revise some of that stuff, the initial impression on me was so strong and so like viscerally like negative, that I think
Mm.
that like that there's certain things that wouldn't take, like when I was trying to replace it with a new memory, because that feeling wasn't necessarily as vivid. And I think that the things that I have manifested quickly like opportunities, like money, like little things kind of working out here and there, right? Like those things that I have manifested have always come from me falling asleep in a good feeling. Like visualization may not even for me be like necessary. It's just like getting wrapped up in that like goody good feeling, like before, like as you're in that like,
Yeah.
restful state. I also like the gateway tapes for like really learning how to access that state too. Just if anyone, I'm like trying to like pour out like ideas
Yeah.
and resources because this is a really like profound time, I think, to be sort of like working with your universe, and kind of like exerting a little bit of imaginal, not control, that's not the right word, but like when advertising is $1 billion industry and they spend tons of money to like control our minds for some reason, and for like so I think that like what a very empowering way to go about getting your needs met and to go about having a life is to really take a lot of that back, and to kind of like guard your subconscious from certain things too, like a protective parent almost.
Yeah. No, we absolutely do. Yeah. And yeah, I'm glad that you like Joseph Ally and Athena because I would say those two are really. Some people are a little bit off put by Joseph Ally because he can be a little weird. Like he used to be like
he's a human being. Like he's had like some issues with drugs, it seems like. And
yeah, and you can see it. You can see his history. You can see his history, and some of his history, wasn't good. But it's good now, and he's quite the living example of it. So yeah, I would say that's like the only. I know there's many out there, but as far as people who've like dedicated their channel, like what they're doing to Neville, I really think he's the only guy, and she's probably the only girl really who are actually really taking it to. They're doing something new. They're actually helping people get the concepts because, Neville was a great teacher, but he also wasn't a very good teacher in some ways. Like
there are holes that people like me
yes.
are finding, and that I'm trying to kind of like reconcile with in my own philosophy. But I will say that, like, have you ever heard of there's two people that I really like. There's Missy Renee, and then there's Dylan James. Have you heard of Dylan James?
I know Missy Renee, and I do know she's cool. And then there's Dylan James. I know I've heard the name. Gosh, I may even actually had him on the show. It's possible, but I don't remember. Oh my gosh, I don't remember.
So I will say that like I stan Dylan James like 7 out of 7 days of the week. I love him because so a lot of his content and material is oriented. Uh-oh, my cat's coughing. Some of his material most of it is oriented toward relationships. And
that guy, okay, I know who you mean. Yeah, okay. Now I remember.
He has these belief tapes that he makes, and a lot of creators make belief tapes, but the ones that he makes are so like articulate. They, for me, work well, maybe because I'm a very verbal person and the affirmations are a little bit wordy, but they are a lot of affirmations like I'm starting to believe, I'm beginning to accept, which can be very like beneficial for your brain because you're not just like jumping into the I am. It's like I'm starting to believe. It's like a more gentle sort of like growth approach, And so he has tapes like that on his channel. He also has like short, like 10-minute like statements where he just repeats like 3 phrases, and then also focuses on like kind of like getting your 3D right, exercising, like nutrition, focuses on like nervous system regulation and breath work. And that the way that he has that sort of system, and as a system of kind of like identity shifting, and he said that he's more influenced by malts and psychocybernetics than Neville. But it all kind of, works together in the sense that, as you change your identity and you change the I am of you, and like, this is the life that I have, this is the life that I experience every day, this is what, Neville talks a lot about naturalness. So a lot of Dylan James's phrasing and his affirmations are like, it is natural and normal for me to feel XYZ, and that it just really resonates with me. So I really like Dylan James as far as like content creators, but there are some that are maybe like, a little bit younger, like millennials and Gen Z. And, I feel that maybe they're doing a little bit more damage, kind of like taking Neville's teachings and like kind of bastardizing them and not taking the law of reversed effort into account. So there's a bunch of like young 20 somethings trying to manifest their ex back, and they're like, getting super like wrapped up in it and super anxious and having anxiety attacks. And, and it's like, I think that, the way that Dylan James and I think Athena and Joseph and Missy Renee and the people that we've brought up, the way that they go about it is so relaxed because there's really no rush. It's really okay, when you're in that state, as opposed to sort of like, I gotta get it, like,
yeah,
it feels so different. It's like a different texture to it, so I love those two, Dylan James and Missy Renee. And, I'll take a look at Joseph Ally's stuff. I haven't watched him in a little while, but have enjoyed like some of his breakdowns and stuff. So
yeah, I would say that the last couple months for Joseph Ally and then Athena, I think are where it really gets good. You know what I mean? I think they've sort of like turned turn a new page where I think they're kind of like next level than they used to be.
I will take that. I will look at that.
Yeah.
Are you pressed for time or anything? Because I do have one more question.
We got time. There's no set times. We're good.
Cool. I think I might have like 10, 15 more minutes worth of gas in my tank. And, so my question is, and this touches on something that you said earlier that I wrote down, is do you think that there are whims that we have that are coming from, because, like if you, it's hard to adopt the Neville worldview and then go look at like some of this black pill, red pill, matrixy material of like, we're living in the underworld and there's archons. I mean, those two ideologies clash, right? So, to what do you believe that certain whims and desires can be, like distractions coming from shadow, coming from victimhood, coming from wounding? Or do you think all desires, point blank period, like come from God?
Yeah, no, I think that it depends on the individual and how much they've cleaned out. Like we talk about health of the body, health of the spirit, connection to the I am. The more work you've done, I could say like the brighter you are. Ultimately,
Right.
the more awake you are. I will say a person, it won't take them very long before they're going to clear out the mess and their whims will just be good. They'll just be from God. They really will be. But I will say that I've certainly had whims that were, you can call them dark, I guess you could say. But the truth is, here's the thing. It's that that's what every manifestation is a path. It can just be whimsical. It can be beautiful, like reversed effort. Like you have a whim. And when a person has had a few whims where they went, oh, wow, whim, and then it manifested, they went, wow, I don't have to try so hard. So I think that like the whims of God manifest very, very easily. And then as far as the archonic whim, right? Like it's like I would say that there comes I think we burn them out. That's the thing. There are many things that there's manifestations that I know I was full on. I mean, I manifested it. It was done. And then I came to a point where I was like, I don't want that anymore. Then I went, but I've wanted it so long. It's such a habit I don't want to give it up. I mean, I have so much invested in this. But
I have
eventually,
felt that what you're talking about.
yeah.
That
And then eventually I was like, I got to drop it. It's got to go. I don't want it. I never did. Because who's me? There's that
Mhm.
universal manager. There's something greater than us that isn't going to let us have what we don't want. No matter how
Have
much
you?
I mean, you probably experienced it.
Yeah. When you fully drop something too, the fucked up thing is like for some reason is that when you fully drop something, like you're like, I'm done, with this, like, or you're either you go into Sabbath or you don't, right? That's okay.
Yes.
Like either way, but when you drop it, it manifests,
You ain't, mhm.
but then you're like, I don't know, I've been there totally. And I think that like if I were to looking at this all as a process, because
Yes.
if if you talk about like sort of like what Jesus did, what Jesus was capable of, that kind of thing, if we were to look at like Jesus the man and the story and the teachings and all of that stuff, it's like if you're looking at that right now, say this is my opinion, we are maybe coming to the place where we will understand, but right now it seems like we don't really have like an understanding of what it might take to, in terms of like spiritual discipline, in terms of being on the path, in terms of going through life experiences. We don't know what it would take for a being to literally walk on water or like literally like perform a miracle. I believe that we might be about to kind of fuck around and find out in that way,
Yeah.
but I feel that it is, we have a ways to go, and I think that that's why like some of the coming back to the I am presence and the imagination versus the will, those two things feel very differently. And for me, there's a lot of rest, there's a lot of safety, there's a lot of provision in the I am, where those little voices of doubt, ego, fear, all of that, and maybe where some of those emotions are like exploited somehow by, the archons or whatever, what I
Yeah.
mean? Like just that is just, it's up to me and how I choose to set myself for the day and like the night ahead. And, I think that we do have a lot of personal responsibility, and that's a tough one for people.
Yeah. Well, something that Neville's like where we talk about like the archonic deception and demons and negative things. I think that really what Neville, I swear he glossed over a lot. I really do
Yeah.
believe it.
Mhm.
Maybe because he was already like so far out for his time, he was like, I'm just gonna just stay somewhat, I'm just gonna keep it cool. And
And manifestation is a niche, just like speaking about like psychic protection and like demonic
yes,
interference. A lot of that stuff has its own niche, and better than anyone, better than I, like everybody, we know that like we can't be everywhere at once. We can't do it all, So maybe one
yeah.
person isn't meant to hold the entire teachings of the universe, but he brought
Yeah.
what he brought, and it was good, and
Oh, it
that,
absolutely was. Yeah.
you
And
know.
I think that I think what he meant when he was just talking about like your God, you're all of it,
Mhm.
there's nothing that can manifest in your experience outside of your assumption, of your consciousness, of your projected consciousness, your I am presence. Like because he was making the point that even if there is archonic deception, right? Even like all these things, they're not as powerful as God. They're not you, you know?
Right.
And so, even if there's like alien, okay, there's alien, there's other life out there, of course, but I mean, the thing is like everything we might see that like, you know, all of it, all the negativity, all the crap, um, it's not
If
as
we were
powerful
to
as
zoom out, it's
it's
also
not a,
part of us,
it's
like,
part of us, but nothing can overpower your assumption, your manifestation, your creation. So I think maybe one of the things about that is like when it comes to maybe like the Neville ideal, is that if you're certain of what you want, if you have your vision, it's something that I know where I screw up is I don't hold my vision all the time. What are the things that I want to manifest?
Mhm.
You know, what are the things that I want to manifest? You know I do it and I drop it, and I think that's good. But I think also we should, because
Return.
I'm finding for me, I need to have a daily practice that keeps everything going. You
Hmm.
know, because then I know that, okay, I do drop the seed, but I have a practice that keeps that momentum going so that the archonic deception doesn't affect me, because I'm God. I manifest what I want, my assumption. I'm creating it, you know. And then of course I'm also open to be like the assumptions and creation of others,
Hmm.
but only what's really resonant with my level of vibe of I amness. I like bad stuff isn't bad energy is not going to is not going bad assumption in this universe won't affect me.
Hmm.
Because
And
yeah,
I think that what you're talking about is really interesting because it kind of like it brings up for me what I've been working on for the last year, which has kind of been like a total like self-concept overhaul. Like I'm not the same person that you spoke with months
yeah,
ago, and have really experienced like there's like that big old man new man sort of change and jump,
yes,
like everything in your reality begins to like respond differently to you. I've experienced that within the last year, and one of the things that you're bringing up for me is like the idea of like spiritual discipline. For
yes, that's what.
me, I think that for me, what allowed me to have that discipline when I was kind of going through that change and that rewiring and like, the transformation was like, I mean, I had to have discipline. Like I had to, because I got to a point where I was so tired of myself and tired of my mind and tired of the things that I was pushing out. So I was like, okay, let me like really look at a lot of where this comes from. And then there's that idea of like, if something tragic or terrible does happen in your reality, where do some of those assumptions come from? Because it's not like you and I are sitting here like deciding that like we're going to go through a really shitty experience if that is going to be what it is. It's like but I think
Yeah,
that those seeds do come from somewhere, maybe some of those concurrent lifetimes that you were talking about. And so for me, this is what makes me think that it like it's not like you're holding on to like if you have a specific desire. I'm not talking about like coming back to that specific desire over and over and over and over and over until you just exhaust it and you exhaust yourself and you're over it and you're like, and you're hot and you're cold with yourself and you're here and you're double minded. And,
yeah,
I'm not necessarily talking about that, but I think that like to regularly return to like whatever your practice is and to hold like the different idea here, even in the face of the opposite, I think that requires a level of discipline that a lot of people maybe struggle with or like I've struggled with in the past. And I think for me, I just had to get so fucking sick of myself that like I made this change. And I have seen my reality shift, though I do think that, and in the last year, I mean, I've been applying this like pretty much daily and have seen a lot change, but I'm also aware that like I'm still so early in the journey and like there's so much more that can be possible. We have energetic set points around certain things
yes,
like how much money we can make or how good it can get or like I have people in my life and I've been this way too where things will get so good in my life and then suddenly I'll get sick because there has to be something, you know what I mean? Like there has to be
yeah,
something. And so it's like I think that in that way it takes time to tease that out. So I guess like if there's anybody listening to this who is on a manifestation journey and is maybe struggling or is like seeing sort of the outpouring of the opposite in their life, like to kind of just like stay with it because it does take, for me, it took time to lay a new foundation and to create like a new experience. It took time um and patience with myself and different practices and lots of grace. And I mean, it's like, I think that there basically with where we're at in terms of like, some Christians, fundamentalist Christians believe that we are like in the end of days. And I agree to some extent in like an esoteric way, but,
Mm-hmm.
but I think that like, there's a lot of stuff that we can do on our own and that take time, but like, we can lay a new foundation and we can like dig things up by the root, but it just maybe for me didn't happen overnight. As much as I believe in quantum leaps and all that stuff, I believe in that, but I think that's also a soul choice that's being made at a level above, to experience like a full on like reality shift in like 24 hours.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's absolutely. I think that it comes down to like the whole, I look at it like what I've been pondering, the whole universal, manager. There is something that's not screwing me up. It's not slighting my will. It just
Right.
knows there's that great line, like I and the Father are one, but the Father is greater than me.
Right.
So that there is a greater presence that I am,
Yes.
that like, and it's right here too, but it's just
Mhm.
that like, it's like you have the I amness of the physical point of manifestation of consciousness, but you
Mhm.
also have that. And so when we're here, we're focused on the I am, we're also focused on our greater I am. And so I think that, we're getting into learning how to, like Neville said, you're never deleted.
So, yeah.
Yeah, like you're never deleted, like your personality, like you don't go away, so don't worry about it.
Time.
And so I
Yeah.
think that we're learning to like that balance. That's the thing, like to be both like, well, God and individuated consciousness at the same time.
Mhm.
And so I think, and that's, well, I mean, that's what everybody's been working on forever anyway. I mean, that's like what, the sadhus in India are working on. That's what, that's what the dudes meditating on the side of a terrifying mountain in Tibet are doing. I mean, that's like, and in a way, our process is definitely not as crappy as theirs.
Right.
I mean, it's kind of like, this is not a bad process to getting there. I'm just trying
Yeah.
to manifest crap. That's what I do, but that's how it sounds superficially, I'm sure, to some people. But I would just say, once you start, you will find it goes way deeper than that.
Yeah. I think it can be a pathway. I think that there's many different pathways for different people, but I think it can be and has been for me. I
Yeah.
hate to use the word like enlightenment because that sounds so whatever. Like it's like the word enlightenment has so much energy around it, right?
It's
But
loaded. Yeah.
very loaded gun, that word.
Yeah.
But I feel like for me, I was so big into like renouncing. Like I was vegan for years and years and years, and kind of internalized a lot of that renunciation spirituality, sort of like more Eastern practices, non-dual practices. And I think that once I started to really dip my toe into like following my desire and like it's okay to take up space, it's okay to have
Yeah.
maybe, like I started to really come alive in a different way and like understand like my power in a different way. Like I kind of it's true what they say, like we are very powerful, and I think
Yes.
that's why, like for me, I think that at this point in time, like last year when I really started deep into this Neville stuff after having like a long spiritual life of and just kind of like glassing over some of the new thought teachers. I like Joseph Murphy quite a bit as well.
Oh yeah, me too.
I can listen to him speak in his Irish accent and I get like, it's like my DNA feels like something is occurring. Like it feels like it's like a transmission coming from Joseph Murphy. And I kind of think it's interesting because the teachings are very similar. Their teacher was very similar, but
Yeah.
I feel like there's a lot to, gosh, we could probably spend a long time on this topic because it is so long and winding and vast, but and I appreciate you too for like inviting me on here. And I I've taken a break for a little while on like creating content and just sharing my voice. And so it's been like really refreshing to have a conversation again in this way, like, through this medium, because I haven't really been doing that so much.
Yeah. Well, it seems like there's going to be like it will start again for you, but it seems like it's going to be in a way
Different.
unlike you've done before.
I can see
It's going
that.
to be very different.
I
Oh, and
receive
Joseph,
that.
yeah, and Joseph Murphy. One sec. Yeah. Yeah, I love this one. Joseph Murray. Of course, I always have all this stuff within arm's reach. I have to. I
Yeah.
have to. Joseph Murphy. Yeah, within you is the power. Like this one is great. I like this guy here. Oh, is that?
This is my big
The
Joseph
big
Murphy.
one. Wow.
Yeah, I'm about halfway through this right now, and I pretty much like read 10 pages every day. But this has all of the books that he ever wrote in it.
Oh, okay, that's cool. I like that.
And
Yeah.
he is very deep into parable as well. Like he has full books where he just does parable and like, and I guess for me, like this might sound like a bitchy thing to say, but I can only read about like, going into the Father's house that has many mansions, and I can only read about the new wineskin. Like I can only read about that so much before I'm just like going a little nuts, So
Oh, I know. Yeah, and it's that's where I think we're getting beyond parable. No, I'm the same way. I can only deal with like
I feel that when you said
like
that, I was like, ding, ding, ding. I was like, I'm over it.
yeah. I think we're done with parable. I think so because it's like I think that we'll always study it. It will exist, but I think it's going to become more of an historian's interest, people who like studying them, and the contemplation has a value. But look, I mean, I don't care about like, sticking your goat in a camel bladder and then walking into the desert, and then someone goes, well, if you dissect that, I'm like, I don't want to.
You're like,
no,
just
I don't want.
Just hold the tea right here. Like I can deal with it. You're like, I can handle it.
Yeah, and like some of it's kind of cool, but this isn't even. I think this is like Hefritz or something like that. This really cool, like philosopher said, like he goes, they were in the desert, and why people are always wandering in the desert trying to find God, I have no idea. I'd go to a forest myself, but they were in a desert because it's what they do. So they're in this desert, and they couldn't irrigate things, and they're like, wow, we're all starving, we can't irrigate the crops because we're in a desert, because we're idiots, right? So we're a bunch of dumbasses in the desert, and so her Fritz comes along and goes, just dig irrigation ditches. And they're like, well, that's not going to work. Anyway, they dig the irrigation ditches, and the water comes. And that was his thing. He's like, if you really had faith and you dug those irrigation ditches, the water would flow. So some of the stuff is really neat, but I mean, at the same time, that
your faith is your fortune,
Yes, your faith is your fortune. Well, you mentioned the Gateway tapes, like the from the Monroe Institute, and if you ever want a copy, I've got all of them. If you ever like want to,
I will be reaching out to you about that.
Yeah,
I will be totally.
I've got the whole thing, all of it,
Okay.
And and it would take me a lifetime to get to the highest level. I'm like, it's really deep. But the thing is, I think we're going to see with the Monroe material is that this is where I think getting beyond parable, I think we'll just start. It's kind of like in the Matrix where you want to download, so like,
Right.
you say, Tank, download me. How do I fly a helicopter? Okay, now I know, I think we're just going to, and it's not transhuman, it's not AI, it's none of that. It's very organic.
Like you could look at a picture and receive the 1,000 words kind of a thing. Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
I think we're going to get into the like the Monroe material, but I think it'll be like where a lot of that's around. Well, it's deep stuff. I mean, but
more automatic, maybe too, like a little less like a little bit more automatic and maybe a little bit more potent in the coming years. And
exactly, I think it's going to be both teachings that we're learning from, and then I think also like if we want to program our consciousness, like we don't need a parable. Like if you want to manifest, let's say, greater financial wealth, I think we're just going to get, frequencies that we can listen to,
Yeah. Morphic
affirmations,
fields. Yeah.
morphic fields, and also our own I am, conscious, our own body consciousness. So it's going to be like, okay, get your mind,
Intention.
body, and we're just going to like go boom. We're going to have these. That's what I see. So I think we're in an exciting time, and that's something that Frank Jacob, who's been on a few times, talks about, like
Yeah.
the two timelines of humanity. And
I
even
can
though
see
there's a timeline for each individual, there are these great big groups, and I
Yeah.
think that definitely you are on the timeline that like I'm on, and many people I know are
Yeah.
on, and we're like we don't know what's there yet, but that's the thing, the I am, those whims, that future pull is pulling us there. We
And
somebody's managing us, that is our
right.
advocate, that it's beautiful.
And the
Yeah.
longer that I think about this and the more that like I've kind of like been aware of like the timeline idea, like the more that maybe I'm a little bit more in trust with, even if it gets kind of hairy a little bit. That's also where some of this stuff comes into practice, like when the rubber really meets the road. Like, you don't think that some of this manifestation shit is going to be useful at that point in time, if that is what it's going to be. Like, if before there's like a full split, if it gets
Yeah.
a little weird, if it gets a little hairy, we'll be able to
I think
use
we're
what we
there.
have been learning. Yeah, I mean,
I think we're there.
but I mean, like, but for me, like, I'm looking outside of my window right now and it's a beautiful night. There's people walking their animals by my house, and so it's like, yes, we are there on some level, but
Mhm.
it's not to where it could be, at least not out front of my, you know what I mean? Like,
Yes.
and so I think that like the choice ultimately kind of boils down to the state of like fear or love. And it's like, which one are you going to choose,
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
But
exactly. Yeah. And that's that spiritual discipline you're talking about. I think that's like a huge one, is that
moment to
it's something
moment
that
choice.
something I know I'm working on too, is keeping that I am presence, to have some practice, which I do. It isn't like I don't have it, but I know I need to put more needs to be put into that, because I think, like, as you mentioned, like the rubber meeting the road, and it's crazy times, which it is. Like now, maybe more than ever, we need that. Just,
That little,
I need to up my vibe, but I need to up my I am a little bit. Yeah,
yeah, like turn up the volume on that, on that,
yeah.
on that.
I
Yeah.
am.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, it was a really nice time chatting, and
yeah,
thank you for having me. I've enjoyed this a lot, and will not take as long to come back to chat. I
yeah.
feel.
I have a feeling too. Let's see if we can do better than 9 months this time. Yeah,
I know
I will.
it's full. I own it. It's fully my fault.
Oh,
I was fully avoiding speaking in front of people for like a season,
yeah,
you know?
yeah. Well, I'm glad that it is very flattering that you did your your reemergence. Like,
Mm,
I love it. This is awesome. So everybody,
no.
Meredith is back. You're going to be hearing from her.
We'll see. But I hope that you have and if you're listening to this, hope you're having a wonderful evening and that you guys all have a good rest of your night.
Yep, we intend it. Take care.
All right,
Bye bye.
bye.